Hello and welcome to the next in our talk on climate change. I'm Becky Walsh and we're here on behalf of Weston-super-Mare Town Council. However, just for a change, we are combining councils. So how exciting. So we've got Nicola, who is, or she might be that side, from North Somerset Council. Nicola, tell everybody about your job, what you do. What's your role for North Somerset?
Okay, so I am the Climate Emergency Project Manager. I started at the council last February. So we declared a climate emergency in February 2019 and then published a strategy and action plan to respond to the climate emergency. And number one on that was we're going to employ a project manager to steer this through. And here I am. So I started in February. I had 3 whole weeks in the council and then lockdown happened. So I've sat in this box ever since then. Hopefully I will start to move out and meet real life people again soon. But yeah, my job basically is to take this action plan, do what I want with it, make it happen, and hopefully sort of update it as and when we know more or can do more, and just keep it moving.
So basically your job is to save the planet on behalf of North Somerset.
Yes. So when I left my old job and everyone asked me where I was going, I said, I'm going to stand on Weston-super-Mare Beach like King Canute. No sea levels, don't rise. So, I mean, I'm doing a good job so far.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the sea levels don't rise at all, and we call it Weston-super-Mare, which is so. If you could get the sea levels to just kind of no, that would be bad. That would be bad. We like the sea levels exactly as they are, no matter what anyone says. We don't care.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful here, absolutely beautiful. So, what inspired you to go into this kind of work? Because I remember being in a science class at school. And the science teacher, I think it's biology, said something about does anyone know what an ozone layer is? And everyone was like, no. And I was like, I can actually answer this one. And I knew, because of my auntie, who was a real environmental thinker, way ahead of her time, already knew about the hole in the ozone layer. Now, we had such a strong reaction to that, with CFCs, and obviously that hole is still there, but closing. What was it? Did you have an amazing science teacher at school? Like, what was it that made you realise about this and step up and decide that you wanted to action it and get a job as the one that you have?
Oh, that really sounds like I had a plan, and I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Does anyone? I don't know. My family were always pretty green. I don't think I necessarily knew that. In the days before we all had recycling bins, we had a recycling bin and we took them to the recycling thing and smashed the glasses into the pots. We always did that.
Fun. I used to love that as a kid. You chuck it as hard as you could. I didn't even know if breaking it was a good idea, but I loved the sound of it breaking. I remember bottle banks.
Don't let our waste team watch this. I don't know if you're supposed to do it, so don't let them tell me off. So I mean, we always were pretty green, I think, but I didn't really know it was a thing, because that's just what we did. And also, I don't think there was such a thing as a green job then. You didn't sort of go to your careers advisor at school and say, I want to save the world, because you don't get told in school that the world needs saving, and you don't get told at school that that's a job. So I went to the careers advice. I mean, this is going back way. This is ridiculous. Careers advice. What do you want to do? I don't know. I'm kind of good at maths. And they went, that's not a good way of choosing anything. So I did maths at uni, and I didn't like it very much. So I stopped doing maths, and I went, what else can I do? And I kind of went through the list of things, and I went, oh, meteorology, that sounds really exciting. And you needed a kind of mathsy, sciencey background. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. So this doesn't sound like I had a plan at all, and really I didn't. So I did meteorology, which is the study of weather rather than the study of meteors, which often gets confused. And it was a sort of high level. It was like geography, but of the sky that I did. And in researching my dissertation, which I did on the fire in Buncefield and how the pollution then kind of dispersed into the atmosphere, it just plopped on Spain is the answer. And so while I was doing that, I researched all sort of air quality and ended up finding myself a graduate job in a company that did lots of air quality work. So in that job, I then ended up reporting air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions on behalf of the UK to the EU and to the UN. And I also part of that job was reporting the local authority emissions as well. So we'd take the UK emissions and chop it up into each local authority and publish that for everybody to see. And then towards the end of that job, I started to feel like I wasn't doing enough. You know, the science became more scary. The reports that came out, yeah, basically we all have to be doing something. And all I'd been doing all this time was counting and telling people this is how bad things are, rather than making a difference to it. So the first change I made was that I slightly changed teams. So I went from just counting emissions to helping other people count their emissions. So going to other countries, other cities, and helping them to work out their emissions calculations. And then also helping them to create action plans. So how do you go from your current emissions to your future, what you want it to be. And then I moved to North Somerset and carried on doing my same job. But my next door neighbour works for the council, and she found out what I did and started sending me things. North Somerset doing this, North Somerset doing that. And then I went and talked at a climate strike day that North Somerset Council held last year, and I talked about what I did and I talked about what they could be doing. And then a couple of months later, this job came up, and my neighbour again went, have a look at this. So here I am, and it felt much more, you know, I can do something where I live about what I already do, and it just felt like the right thing to do.
So obviously councils, it's one of those things, isn't it, that we sort of imagine that what happens is we put our recycling in the bin, the council takes it away, magic wand, da-da, we're all doing our bit. What isn't working about recycling and what is?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Okay, so in North Somerset, we are really good at recycling. It is a really good success story. We're not as good as Wales. All of the local authorities in Wales, or nearly all of them, are really, really good. And they really pride themselves on that. And part of their success is that they pride themselves on it. So we need to get that, I think, and shout about how great we are. So we're in the top 10 of the best local authorities that recycle. I think we're the second best unitary authority as well in terms of the percentage of our waste that gets recycled.
Wow,
pretty amazing. So one of the things that's really, really good about what we do is the curbside sort. And when I first moved here, I thought it was a ridiculous system. I was like, in my old local authority, we'd had a massive bin, shove it all in, and they take it away. And I was like, what is this ridiculous, have to sort it all out. But actually, it's a really, really good system. So you get a lot less contamination. If you have a big bin, there's a lot of people that don't put the right things in the bin or don't clean it very well, or some random stranger will come past and put something in your bin. And that causes that entire bin, or sometimes that entire lorry load, to be contaminated with dirt and the wrong things. And then that has to go to landfill or incineration or something, and it doesn't get recycled. So I think it's probably very rare that a whole lorry load would go, but you know, whatever the thing touches or whatever is in there, it just ruins things. So having people on the roadside, you know, take out putting the right thing in the right box means that a lot less stuff has to, you know, get thrown into landfill instead. So we're very good like that. What's not working is apparently something like 27%, I think, of our black bin waste is still food waste. And if we're putting food waste goes to landfill, it creates methane. So you get all of the waste gets on top of it, and then it biodegrades or it degrades anaerobically, which means without oxygen, and that produces methane. And methane is much more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So it's really important that we don't put food waste in our bins. And part of the reason for that as well is that we have a lot of people who have flats, who can't have, you know, they don't have all of the same food waste bins or recycling bins that they might do if they have a nice big house with a curb. But hopefully that is something that we're changing. We're sort of trialing doing more things with flats now and into the future. And I think there's more requirement from government as well to do that. So hopefully that means more support for that to happen.
Great. Okay, so so food waste, don't put it in your bin, put it in your caddy.
Yes.
It's so much nicer now we can actually use bags, because I have biodegradable bags now, because putting it in when you couldn't have a bag was just like, oh my God, it's alive.
You know, though, actually, and this sounds horrific and just totally the wrong advice, but it's actually better to put it in a plastic bag in your food waste bin, because the biodegradable ones get caught in the mechanism when they put it into a big chopper-upper, and when it does that, the biodegradable ones are a bit sort of thin and rubbish, and they clog it up. So actually you're better to put it in like an old bread bag or an old carrier bag that you're not using than to put it in.
Top tip, and you just saving some money.
I know, it's so ridiculous, isn't it, that there's this whole market for these bags and we're all spending loads of money on them and we don't need to.
Yeah, because my bread bag or whatever it is that I've got will work just as well. I mean, there's always some random plastic bag that something random has come in, so I can easily use that. So that's fantastic.
Even though it feels so wrong, doesn't it?
No, it's just like, where did that? Oh no, not another. But I ordered something recently, and just the amount of, it was a new Hoover, and the amount of plastic bags that came off this Hoover, because every single part was in another plastic bag. So yeah, absolutely, all of that. So yes, I can reuse all of that, because otherwise you just saw the dog. It get you anyway. At least I'm reusing.
But the other thing about food waste as well is just thinking about all of the waste of it. Yeah. So every time, whatever food we make has a big process to it. So there's the emissions or the impact from the farming, and then there's the emissions or the impact from the driving the food to the supermarket, and then there's whatever happens at the supermarket and whatever happens to get it home to you, and then there's all of your money that you're paying for that food is all wasted if you're not eating it. So that's like an absolute top tip to reduce your impact on the environment, is just to not waste food. And it's difficult, it's a change of the way you do things, isn't it?
Well, and also I think that there's a lot of misinformation with sell-by dates and things like that, which sell-by dates where the thing hasn't gone off. It's kind of, we have a nose, use the sniff test. That's what I tend to use.
Yes.
Does it taste right? Does it smell right? And also for people who live on their own, everything is designed for couples or families. So it becomes really difficult if you're trying to to actually reuse food, and this is why freezers are great, because sometimes you just got to go, okay, so if I section this off, put that bit in the freezer, if I use that bit. But sometimes it can be really difficult in our very busy lives, but it's just thinking ahead and planning your meals so that there isn't so much food waste. But it really is down to a bit of planning, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also before you go shopping, just looking in your cupboards, looking in your fridge before you go shopping, and making sure another thing that I've heard about recently is, I can't remember what it's called, like a use first box. If you have like a little box, put it on one shelf, or have one shelf of your fridge that is all the things that are about to go off. You put everything on there, and you know that shelf needs to be used next.
First. Yeah, because otherwise I think with my stomach, and it's usually the first, it's usually the last thing that I bought, because it's the thing that I wanted, and then I use the thing that I should be using. So you gave us a really excellent misconception in a sense there, with the thinking that we were doing a good thing by buying these biodegradable bags. So what other misconceptions do people have about councils and what happens to our waste, or any sort of thoughts that you've got about some of the misconceptions?
About councils as well. I was thinking when you said misconceptions, I was thinking like about climate. So I think the climate misconceptions we might be just about over. I'd like to think that climate's not real, it isn't man-made, it isn't happening for ages, it isn't happening here. So I think we're definitely past the it's not real, it's not our fault. But that it's not happening here and it's not happening yet might be something that we're not quite over yet. I think
Well, it's very interesting you should say that. I've got this social media app called Clubhouse, and it's an audio conversation thing, which is really interesting. And yesterday, it's like listening to chat radio, really, if you're not participating. And yesterday, I was in a room where there was somebody who was in Pakistan, somebody else was in Egypt. I think someone else was in Iran, but they were in different places, and all of them were saying, oh my God, it's so hot. It's, 45 here, it's 50 here. It's, we can't go out. We're staying indoors. Can you hear me because the ceiling fan is so loud, And I sort of sat there listening to this because this is something that's actually happening in that moment. And I think that we had grey skies, slightly drizzly. And I was thinking, wow, you're really sensing this. Well, we're over here going, oh, when's summer going to start? But I'm really hearing in people's voices struggling with too much heat. And I think that we're through things like social media and things like that, if you do have connections with people in different countries, you're starting to become more conscious of it. And something with Clubhouse is they're not your friends, they're not people you've decided to follow, they're people who have turned up into a room because they're passionate about certain things. And I go quite often to the climate change conversations on Clubhouse, but just in a general, this was a general kind of like chit chat conversation, and I would say a good 50% of the people were really struggling with extreme heat more than they were normally used to. So hopefully people, through these kinds of new ways of looking, or television documentaries and things like that, because in the UK I think that we don't feel it, and when we do feel it, we're grateful.
Yeah, but I think we also have really short memories, I think, because as soon as it switches, almost as soon as the rain starts, the day one of the rain starting, oh, we needed that, oh, my garden needed it or something. Day two, you're like, oh, where's the summer gone? And you're furious. Oh, I thought it was going to be summer and it's not. But even just thinking back, 2018, so 3 years ago, was that really long, dry summer. And we had, I just remember cracks in the earth. I went up in Castlebatch Park and my son got his foot stuck in a crack. It was, it's right. And you could see the gap between the grass and the pavement and things like that. It was so dry, and it had huge impacts to food as well. But I think we're relatively kind of divorced in this country from where our food comes from. And you sort of go, oh, price of this has gone up. That's annoying, isn't it? But you don't sort of think, why has the price gone up? Oh, it's because actually our farmers are struggling, or the farmers abroad we're importing their food from, they're struggling. I've gone massively off on a tangent there about
tangent. But
I think we sort of don't always connect those dots very well. And I think just watching, like you said, watching what's going on in other countries, sort of start to think, okay, well, we're how many years behind them are we? I think we're relatively we're in an interesting place where we are, and that's part of the reason why we get so much rain, because we're an island and we've got the Gulf Stream going around us, so we're sort of shielded from the coldest and the hottest weathers generally. But if you look at France, the last few summers in France, they've had a lot of people dying from heat stress. So it's only a matter of time before maybe you see what happened in Canada and America recently happening in France, and in mostly all the bits of Europe that don't have big bits of coast. So anywhere that's a big bit of land is likely to struggle a lot more with temperatures than we are. But it's probably only a matter of time. And at what point do we go from, oh, this is a bit uncomfortable, to this is dangerous? I mean, I don't like it going much over 25. I get very sweaty and uncomfortable. Unless I'm on holiday, it's a very different thing, isn't it?
Yes.
But in Canada, they're seeing
Colorado, yes.
Yeah, exactly. This is lovely. But there's only so many times I can do that at work. And yes. It's not so good. But in Canada at the moment, it was nearly 50 degrees last week, and I can't comprehend what that must feel like.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. Wow. Okay, so we know that the misconception about climate change is on the way out, so that's a good thing. What other misconceptions can you think of?
I mean, I don't want to get into too much misconceptions about North Somerset Council because we might be here all day. But I think because I'm very new to councils, you know, I worked in the private sector until I worked here, so I didn't, you know, I don't really feel like I've reached my comfort zone yet in being in the council. But what really has struck me with being here, and you're probably the same with Weston Town Council, is that the people doing the jobs on the ground really care about the communities that they're doing it in, and it's really about looking after people. So I think that's probably a really a misconception that I think a lot of people have, that it's that the councils are doing it for themselves. And there are so many people who work at councils all across the country who are just desperately trying to improve where they live, basically, and trying to make it, you know, a nicer place for all of the communities around them. So we're doing that with climate change as well, but it's just a bit of a strange a strange one. And
I'm surprised, because I thought that you, like me, were just in it for the huge wage packet.
Oh, massive.
So, yeah, I mean
enormous. And also the glamour. I mean, I'm actually on TV right now, aren't I?
The glamour. It's I think you're right there, and I think, you know, I hear that, you know, the be it about any council really, where they kind of go, oh, you know, they don't care about us, they're not working very hard, they're not trying. And actually every single person that I have come into contact with, be it at North Somerset Council, and especially with the team that I work with at the town council, because I'm with them all the time, the passion is really powerful and tangible, and they really care. And also they get very hurt when they read comments, especially because my job is comms, so reading comments saying that people don't care or aren't trying or aren't, you know, because there are huge restraints that come. Some, you know, some of them are financial restraints, some of them are practical restraints, but it does kind of, sometimes you do end up going a little bit, oh, just if only you knew. And you can't talk back, well, actually I think you can. You know, it's very, you know,
and like you say, all of those constraints, so your financial constraints, your the other one you said, anyway, all of those sort of big things, and everyone has a really difficult job to do. They're already, you know, really stretched, and then I come along and go, hang on a minute, have you considered climate change? And then COVID comes along and goes, hang on a minute, you've got to do all of this, but at home. And also I'm going to add this to your job list as well. And I'm going to add this to your job list as well. And you can't go and see any of your colleagues ever again. And it's just, you know, it's one thing on top of the other. And rather than just throw everything in the air and run away, everyone I've worked with is just going, okay, right, another thing. I'll do another thing. Okay. And it's amazing, but it's terrifying as well.
Yeah, it's all of the above. So tell us some of the projects and things that you've got going on at North Somerset Council. What are you excited about?
Oh, okay. So one of the things that is that has been a real success for us, and I'm also really excited for kind of where it's going as well, is carbon literacy. So, I mean, essentially the way we do carbon literacy at North Somerset Council is that I sit and talk at people like this about climate change, and they go away and go, oh, I've got to sort things out, something like that. So we work with an organisation called the Carbon Literacy Project, and that project started in Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So they were one of the first authorities that said, yes, we're going to get to net zero, or we're going to, you know, it's a climate emergency, we've got to do something really drastic about this. And they developed this carbon literacy course. I mean, there are quite a lot of them around, but this is sort of a nationally, internationally renowned one now. And they've designed a specific course for local authorities as well. So, which is great, because it means I didn't have to design it myself, which is nice. But it looks at, you know, what is your job as a local authority? What do you have to do? Who do you have to consider? And then it sort of has it's like one of those roller coaster of David Attenborough type films where you start off and you go, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And at the end, you're like, come on, let's go and do it. And I do actually make them watch that as well. But we sort of, there's quite a lot of climate science and impacts, you know, what is happening, who's it affecting, how is it affecting people around where you live. And then towards the end of the course, we talk about, okay, well, what do you do in your day-to-day life, and how can you use your new climate knowledge to shape what you do? So some people will have a very tangible thing that they do, like the bins and the recycling, or they might be tending to our parks, or the rewilding projects, those sorts of things. And they kind of get it already. This is what I'm doing. I need to do it in as green a way as possible, or whatever. But how do you then say to a social worker, or a PA, or anyone else who has a slightly different sort of type of job, what can they be doing? And it's, it might be that all they can do is travel to work in a more sustainable way, or they can do their home visits out as a social worker, or as whatever, in a more sustainable way. Or it might be that they can talk to other people about climate change. It might be that they can, when they're putting up a road sign that says the road is shut because we're building a cycle lane, we put a road sign up that says the road is shut because we're building a cycle lane, because we're trying to get people out of their cars, because we're trying to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions because of that sort of, how can you change your job just a little bit or a lot to reflect the climate emergency, basically. So it's been really, really great. And I think because I run it in-house, it feels a bit more real than, you get somebody else in, and you go on your day's course, and it's great, and you come away and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do everything, and then 3 days later you've forgotten it and you're back to normal work. And I think partly it's great because I'm physically talking to these people, virtually physically talking to these people, and and we can make their plans together. So I think in a way they've got me looking at them, so they feel like must do it. But also we get to kind of understand where it's going with it, and I can follow up with them afterwards and say, what does it work? Has it worked? How do we change what works? And some of them come back a few weeks later and say, this has happened, and I've got this new contract that I need to put out to tender, and this is how it's always, we've always done it the same way. How can we make it different? And we'll go through it together. It's quite exciting. And then I get these lovely feedback from people who will get in touch and say, this has changed everything. I understand what I need to do now. And it's just lovely.
That's great. I love that. It's amazing. So have you got any tips for people who might be thinking, kind of like, oh, what can I be doing at home? So sort your recycling, I guess. So try and make sure that you put stuff separately in the boxes. Yes.
But that's the absolute minimum that you should be doing.
Okay.
I don't mean that in like, oh, you've got to change everything. Okay, top tips. First thing is, don't panic. Don't spend lots of money. Don't, go out and buy your new cup and your bag and your all of those things. If you've got those, brilliant. If you do buy 20 coffees a day, get a cup. That's pretty sensible. But if you don't know where to start, first of all, just take a step back, take a breather, look at the big picture. I think is really important. I think a lot of people make these big, bold choices and big replacements, and it might work, it might not, but you've still bought a thing. Anyway, that's that bit. But so I think kind of, where do I start? First of all, get a carbon footprint app, or fill in your carbon footprint on a calculator online. I personally really like Geeky Zero and Paw Print. So both of those give you a really nice breakdown to see where your big impacts are. So it might be that most of your emissions come from transport, or most of your emissions come from your home, or from what you buy, and that gives you a starting point, and it gives you okay, this is what I need to really focus my attention on. And also both of those apps give you little tips, so Geeky Zero in particular can put you on a path and say, these are some, they have hundreds of suggestions, but they can tailor it to you, and they can give you things, and you can just swipe through it. No, not doing that, not doing that. Ooh, I'll do this one. So that's really nice. But my own personal things to do, I'd go straight away, the things that you can do without even leaving your home. Change your energy supplier. It's really easy. green energy is no longer more expensive. It doesn't have to be more expensive. In fact, often it is actually cheaper. So ideally you pick one that's, you know, really good and really ethical. But if you can't, you know, if that's too big a step, then you just tell your energy supplier you want a green tariff, and it's giving them a message, it's making it the norm, it's telling them this is what I have to do. Change your bank. This is a big one, I think. But actually it's really easy, but it sounds terrifying. But all of the big banks basically fund fossil fuels. So it's something, since we signed the Paris Agreement in 2015 saying we're going to go do whatever we can, the banks have put £3 trillion into digging oil out of the ground and coal out of the ground and all of that. It's just incredible. So, you know, when you put money in your bank and you receive interest, that interest comes from digging things out of the ground to burn. So there are banks like Triodos or Starling. There's lots of others as well that don't do this at all, but also building societies tend to be much better. So go with your, I don't know, Nationwide or someone like that, that have a bit more of an ethical stance and don't just go for the big interest. Then some real things, I guess, check your insulation. Has your roof got a good deep layer? Is it good? Check if you're eligible for any funding. There'll be some funding coming out from North Somerset Council soon. So watch this space, I guess, on that. But there's lots, you know, there's lots of things on insulation. Failing that, make sure your boiler is serviced, it's running efficiently. Go with the old-fashioned, like, dad things of turn your thermostat down. We don't talk about that anymore. It used to be like that was your first thing, turn your thermostat down. We don't talk about it. It's really strange. Go straight for like retrofit your entire house. How about go from 19 to 18 or 21 to 20, and that saves like 10% by turning it down by 1 degree. Turn your radiators off in the rooms that you don't use. Wear a jumper. I'm going on, so I'm going to carry on. Stop me when you get bored. Walk more. So if you're going less than a mile, walk. Less than 2 miles, do it on a bike. If you can go further, great. But most of us don't. I don't get enough exercise. I know we all know we should be doing enough exercise. We're all told 30 minutes a day or whatever it is that you're supposed to do. I do the school run, which is a 20 minutes at most, and it's not a particularly hard walk. So kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Walk to the shops, or walk to school, or walk to work. Have plants in your garden. Really, this is like a fun one. Don't pave your garden. Don't tarmac it over. Don't cut down your trees and your shrubs and things like that to put your car on it. So trees, shrubs, even grass, take carbon out of the air and put it into the soil. And it also, you know, it can be beneficial to your bees and your butterflies and your hedgehogs. All of those things are really, really struggling. But they also can reduce the risk of flooding. They can make your home cooler. When we were talking earlier about getting to 40 degrees or something in this country, if you have a tree in your front garden instead of a car, it's going to keep your house much cooler. And it's really, really important having that sort of natural shade. Really important. Right, now I've got 2 more. Stop buying things that we don't need. It's really important. And most of these things that I've listed here are not going to make a difference on North Somerset's targets. This is not like me making North Somerset, you know, these are things that will happen somewhere else and I won't be able to count them. I wish I could. But you know, every time we buy a thing that has been made new, there are raw materials that have been dug up or have been, you know, cotton that's been grown. There's fossil fuels and environmental and human impacts at every stage of the process. So if you want something, like, take a minute. Do I need this? Put it in your basket. Wait a week. Do I still need this? Is your old one really dead? Could it be repaired? Could it be repaired by a local person or by yourself or something? Could you buy it secondhand? We have in Weston, we have the most amazing charity shops. And where I live, there's about 4, like about a 3-minute walk from my house. Love it. And then my final top tip is to talk about it. And I think that's really important as well. Like if you decide that you're going to get the milkman to deliver your milk instead of carrying plastic bottles or something, talk to your neighbour about it and say, oh, I've done this, it's really great, I love it. And talk, you know, that water cooler moment that we no longer have. I think it's really important, you know, tell people, if you find it really, really difficult to find the information, tell someone, shout about it. Why don't I know what the greenest car to buy is? Or, you know, I don't know, something like that. I think if you find that actually I've always driven to the shops and suddenly I've started walking and I really like it, it makes me happier, then tell your best mate, maybe they'll do it, maybe they'll walk with you.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Was that preachy enough for you?
No, I loved it. It was absolutely brilliant. It just made me think. I needed a bigger water butt, so I got a bigger water butt, and so then I asked my neighbour next door if we could attach my old water butt onto their downpipe. So now which we have. So because they've got some pot plants, but they don't have a garden at the front. I've got a little garden at the front. So now we've got water at the front to wash our cars with, and to also their plants and my plants, and it's just little things like that.
Yeah,
you know, you sort of think it's down the side, it's not an eyesore, and actually that's going to make a bit of a difference. It's just all of the bits of a difference that add up to a massive difference. So that's really good. Oh, Nicola, that was amazing. Thank you so much for speaking to me, and for everyone, really. Really insightful, really helpful, loads of really great tips there. So that's good. So yeah, and also underlining how passionate we are about our local area and making a really big difference. That's great. Good. So I will return with more experts in climate change for part of our own Western Town Council declaring climate emergency. And so anything that we can all do to make the world a better, happier, cleaner, greener, safer space, that's what we're all about. So that's a good thing. Thank you so much, Nicola.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.